Live from the Pickleball Giants studios in San Antonio, Mike Taylor and Sam Freese.
Well. Half of that is right. Samuel Adon Freese here as we react to what can only be described as an unforeseen event that we just all witnessed. Cows win. Biggest road win in franchise history. Beating an 8-1 Vikings team by 37 points on the road. Final Cows 40, Vikings 3. We talked about a little bit of our expectations on the radio show this week of what we expected to see after the disappointing loss to Green Bay. Obviously, Mike is probably touching down in the hellscape right about now, and he'll be as shocked shitless as we all are watching, sitting here talking about what we just saw play out for the last 3 hours. And, Mike was, of course, in typical Mike fashion, pets' heads are falling off. The win or the loss in Green Bay is a season ender. We're staring at a insurmountable uphill battle to get back into a playoff spot. And of course, it's the NFL, so the Cowboys come out and beat an 8-1 team with their largest margin of road victory ever. I mean, this is exactly what you've come to expect from this league. It's exactly the reason we continue to tune in, week out. It's the exact reason why you can never take one game as a giant synopsis of how the rest of this season's going to go. But all of that being said, you could not have found me a person in America that would have predicted the outcome that we just saw here today. Again, Cows win 40-3 up in Minnesota. It got so bad we actually saw Cooper Rush return to the field in Minnesota. A development that if you had told me we would see, on Friday, if you had told me we would see Cooper Rush, I would have told you, wow, that's the Cowboys season is actually over. We are overreacting and pulling Dak to try to get a spark in a game where they're getting blown out and not the other way around. I mean, it is again, it's the reason this week or this league is as enjoyable as it is week in and week out. I mean, it's the reason that a Cowboys team is now sitting in second place with the Giants' loss to the fighting Dan Campbell's earlier today. And it's a league where the Cows have a chance to win on Thanksgiving Day now and really solidify that second place position. Not only the second place in the division, but also solidify a future playoff spot, which is, like we were talking with the loss last week in Green Bay, you heard it as stupid and as Mike pointed out on the radio show all week, as unnecessary of a reference as it was for Dak to say it is a playoff game. They absolutely performed like it was a playoff game, and Minnesota performed like they were an 8-1 team playing with house money and didn't need to put up as much of a fight in week number, what are we at? Week 11, week 10 technically, or game 10, week 11 of the league. It looked like one team was fighting to respond from a massive disappointment last week, and it looked like another team was a bit hungover from a great comeback against an elite team in Buffalo, or at least a team we believe is elite. It absolutely played out in that manner. And Minnesota looking hungover from the big comeback win, and Dallas looking pissed off and ready to make a statement after the disappointing loss last week in Green Bay, where they gave up, 17 straight points to close out the game in the fourth quarter and overtime, and what turned out to be the Cowboys' first loss in 195 games, where they had a 2-touchdown lead going into the fourth quarter. I mean, you got the historic lows of last week, where a historic franchise low, where Cows blow, like I said, first loss after 195 franchise games, leading by 2 touchdowns to start the fourth quarter. And then they turn around and beat the best team in that division by a franchise record-setting road win margin of 37 points. I mean, that is the perfect dichotomy of this league, watching the Cowboys the last 2 weeks. And similar to what I said as far as the Cowboys' loss in Green Bay, I think it's demoralizing, but there's not a lot to take out of it in terms of a long-term perspective about this team, in the same way that I don't think there's a whole lot to take out of this response that we saw in Minnesota today, except for the fact that I think they're the same quality of team that lost in Green Bay and just put an ass whipping on Minnesota. I think they are obviously a team still with their deficiencies, very clearly defined deficiencies, but looking at the way the defense responded, specifically with the rush defense against a Minnesota team that has been able to move the ball all season, with Dalvin Cook and even Kirk Cousins having a career year, you saw their absolute worst performance of the season, and I think you can clearly, I mean, what was it, 7 sacks against Kirk Cousins for the Cowboys defense, a career high. A quarterback who's known for holding the ball and taking unnecessary sacks. You see a Cowboys defensive line that was able to get to him all night, all afternoon, and that clearly is this Cowboys recipe for success. If you allow them to not have to worry about the run game, you're not going to be able to have all day back there to get the passing game going, and that was clearly the case in Minnesota today. They never were able to establish the run, had to go to the passing game to keep up with the Cowboys' efficient offensive production, and the defense stepped up and did what they do best, what they've statistically done best over the course of this season so far. I mean, I saw. To put it into perspective, at one point in the game, they were showing, Cal's defense, 4th best against the pass, but 29th best against the rush, 12th best overall. So, that's still the recipe, as we saw in Green Bay, last week, the total disrespect of, Green Bay down 2 touchdowns in the 4th and still sticking with the run game and being able to pull that game out. That is still obviously the recipe that works against this Cowboys defense. But again, if the offense is able to allow the defense to pin their ears back like they were able to do today in Minnesota, you obviously see the Cows have the weapons to be an absolute game-winning defense in terms of providing the pressure and having the back end coverage in the secondary to be able to fill the box and trust your guys on islands. Something that Trayvon Diggs has gotten significantly noticeably better at over the last 4 or 5 games over the second half of this season so far. That is also Diggs getting the task of following Jefferson around at times when this game was still in a manageable position for Minnesota, and Minnesota got no foothold whatsoever. And that is, at the end of the, when you think about the Cowboys' odds going into mounting a deep successful playoff run, it's still going to hinge on the defense's ability to stop the run. And I think the offense over the last 4 weeks has shown that they weren't capable of lifting the defense out of holes when normally when Cooper Rush was making his starts, the defense is holding teams to under 20. And then Dak comes back, throws interceptions, put the defense in bad situations, shortens the field, and the defense all of a sudden starts giving up closer to 30, and the Cows offense can't make up for it. I think today was we've gone this far talking about the, offensive defensive side of the ball, but, Cows are going to have the special teams performer of the week, a position that they have not invested in the last few years, have totally been an afterthought, a guy that the Saints had second half of last season, and the Cows get lucky and pick him up in training camp after their other plans fall through, after they try to get the Tech kid to be the kicker. They try to get the Canadian football guy to be the kicker. And then third option falls into their lap. Of course, we're talking about Brett Maher, the now record-setting kicker. I mean, a guy that has done twice as much as any other person in the league when it comes to kicking 60-plus yard field goals. Another 60-yarder today gives him 4 now on his career. Next closest guy, a group of guys tied at 2. So, looking at, and the 60-yarder that Maher kicked technically kicks it twice. And that's not to mention also the 50 and 53-yarder he kicked as well, along with 27, something shorter. But 4 for 4 field goals, technically 5 for 5 if you count the one where they took it off the board to do the replay on the CD catch to end the second or first half, and 4 for 4 on extra points as well. So, a guy that they had fall back into their lap after having familiarity with him the first time through the organization, a guy that has always been dependable on the further he gets away from the uprights, which is odd enough. A guy that has struggled from the 20 to 40 range, but has been historic, all-time great when it comes to 40, 50 plus, and especially, as I say, 60 plus, where he is now the only kicker in NFL history with 4 field goals of 60 plus yards or more. Next closest group of guys with 2. I mean, I think this is going to be an extremely short edition of Overreact. And if Mike was here, I think it would still be one of our shorter editions all season. I don't know what all you say about this outside of pointing out and praising the efficiency of the offense. Dak finally, when he was pulled there in the fourth quarter, 22 of 25, 276 yards, 2 touchdowns. Obviously, his most efficient game, his best game since coming back from the injury. His best game, arguably his best game in a long time. But we all saw who the real difference maker was on the offensive side of the ball today, and it's the guy that has turned out to, you could even argue, has now surpassed CeeDee Lamb as the Cowboys' best offensive weapon, and that's, of course, Tony Pollard, the pending unrestricted free agent this offseason, as Romo and Nance danced around and talked about a little bit. But Pollard with more total yards today than the entire Vikings offense. I mean, again, I don't know what you take away from or what you hold on to in the long run when it comes to some of these stat lines, because I don't think Minnesota is that bad of a team. I don't think Dallas is. I think Dallas is closer to the team that we saw on the field today than Minnesota is. That's for sure. But I think you're looking at, again, a team that was hungover from last week and a team that was pissed off from last week in a league where the Eagles should have lost to the Colts earlier in the noon window if it wasn't for a late game drive and a Jalen Hurts quarterback sneak to sneak that win out for Philly 17-16. A league where the Lions knock off the Giants and have now won a few games in a row, with, of course, the Giants coming in Thursday afternoon to play the Thanksgiving matchup against the Cowboys. I mean, that game has now taken on, obviously it was going to have its own importance to begin with the division implications and the tight standings within the NFC East. And that's not even to mention not to be slept on, the Washington Commanders, pulling out another win today with Taylor Heineke beating the worst team in the league, the Houston Texans. I mean, not much of a surprise in that outcome, but has to be mentioned that, this division just continues to outperform most people's expectations. I mean, if you listened, and I should give him credit where it's due, if you listen to Mike throughout our entire training camp, on the radio show and on here as we were discussing the upcoming NFL season, Mike said there were absolutely every team was improved in the division except for potentially Dallas, who had the most significant offseason losses and had done the least to replace that level of production. So, I mean, I think you look up and down this division, there is even the now 9-1 Eagles. I mean, there's really not much separation between the four teams, and with the Giants coming in Thursday afternoon, I think the Cowboys have absolutely another chance to make a statement about what kind of team they're going to be as they round into form here in the second half. Again, of course, this is Cowboys Overreact, sans Mike Taylor. Mike is on his way back to the hellscape. He'll be off the radio show all next week. You'll have me and Uncle Andy Monday, and then me and some incarnation of a show Tuesday and Wednesday before we all go on holiday leave and get ready for that aforementioned Giants game Thursday afternoon. We will not do a Mike Taylor live Wednesday night since we are going to do Cowboys Overreact on Thanksgiving. So as you get tired of, as you watch the game with your family and start to slide into a little bit of the turkey coma, throw on YouTube and we'll put you to sleep as we hopefully overreact to a solidifying divisional win for the Cowboys against the Giants. Again, this is Cowboys Overreact, brought to you by Pickleball Giant. Pickleball Giant, located out at 1604 and Bitters. I caught a little bit, CBS ran their celebrity pickleball tournament this past week, and it looked nothing like this. Actually, I take that back. Watching the celebrities play it, I really do think this is granted, this might be the overconfident former athlete in me that thinks that this could be a sport that Mike and I would dominate as doubles partners with our complementary skills. Well, not that complementary skill. That's ill-timed editing by LG there. But yeah, Pickleball Giant, they have everything you need, whether you're a beginner, expert, intermediate, whatever stage of learning the game that you are. Obviously, it's a new game, fastest growing hobby game. Basically, it's fastest growing because anybody can play it, and it's fun for all ages. Steph and I ended up getting into a match a couple weeks ago where we absolutely got our ass whipped by a couple of people that were already well into retirement. And again, that is what makes it fun, watching the celebrities play. It reminds me that it's fastest growing because it's ultra accessible. But anyway, like I said, go out there, see our friends out at Pickleball Giant. They'll let you try out any of the equipment. And like I said, any level. If you're a beginner, they'll walk you through it. They can get you set up with everything you need to go hit the courts. A little bit of, we'll burn through a little bit of this. Like I said, we're not going to go too long because I don't really know what to take in the long run away from a game where the Cowboys just dominated every facet. And, hell, they were running, it's a blowout when CBS cuts away from a Cowboys 325 window in every market but Dallas and the city that they're playing. And that's what we had today. What I think I marked, it was right here, about over halfway through the third quarter, or right at about the halfway mark. CBS is cutting into Cincinnati, Pittsburgh in every market damn near every market except Dallas and Minnesota. So, I mean, that the unheard of nature of CBS cutting away from a Cowboys game, even when the Cowboys are the one that's doing the ass whipping, I mean, that just doesn't happen. And that lets you know the historic nature of a win like this. And again, we can call it historic because it is now officially the Cowboys' biggest road win in franchise history. So a week after setting history for the wrong reasons, they turn around and set history in a much more positive manner with the big win over Minnesota. We do, starting just a few observations we'll burn through here and then get to the chat before we get out. I still hold firm that the Viking clap is a good bit in pregame. I like the slow clap. I'm a fan. Always been a fan of the slow clap. Sucker for the slow clap. Something about hearing that many people in unison, counting down the kickoff with the buildup of the slow clap will always be a good bit. But what's not a good bit is the Vikings horn that plays after they play it. They play it so excessively. I understand if it's a first down or if it's a big 20, 30-yard play, obviously a touchdown. Like, I get it. I get the bit. But they would play the thing after it was announced it was a penalty on Dallas. And then as the game only got further and further out of control and became, that much more of a laugher, hearing the Viking horn when you're team's down 30 in the third quarter, I'm not exactly sure that really holds the same amount of motivation as it did in the first half. But I get it. If that's your bit, you got to stick to your guns. But there was a lot of humor sitting here watching the game with LG and the roommate, and every single time the Viking horn would go off in the second half, I would just think to myself, like, surely their own fans are ass whipped hearing that. It almost feels like a troll. It almost feels like you blow the horn, here comes the comeback, mount the comeback. It's only a 37-point game, 5 touchdowns, an onside kick, and a field goal, and we're right back in this thing. So, I mean, I get the bit, but there's got to be somebody that has the editorial sense to say, let's just let the crowd simmer on this massively disappointing defeat. But again, it's the NFL. I mean, the Vikings are still sitting 8-2, complete driver's seat of that division, and I don't know what someone would try to convince you changes about their postseason odds after watching that game. I think they're still the exact same team. They still have the arguably the most explosive offensive weapon in the NFC in Jefferson, who had no impact on the game today. Kirk Cousins having a career year, but also just got sacked 7 times in a game, which set a new career high. I mean, that's Kirk Cousins. That's the Minnesota Vikings. That's the pedigree that we've come to expect from them when it comes playoff time or last quarter, last third of the regular season. And so I still think you're looking at one of the better teams in the NFC, but I think it's similar to the Eagles. I don't think that record necessarily fits the separation from the rest of the teams that the record shows. I mean, I don't think Minnesota or Philly sitting with 1 loss are that much separated from, Giants, Cows sitting there with 3 losses now. I think it's still, or not to mention the, entire NFC West. I mean, I think you're looking at still a very, very wide open NFC when it comes playoff time. I don't think there's a massive betting favorite. And I think to games like today and games like the Lions beating the Giants only further solidify that thought. Starting a few more, talking about the Cows defense, again, Dallas doesn't allow a touchdown in the first quarter. Now the only team left in the NFL that has not allowed a touchdown all season in the first quarter. A massive accomplishment to hang your hat on. A great stat to display the ability of this defense to set the tone. Minnesota gets a field goal in the first quarter that would turn out to be unbelievably their only points on the board all afternoon. But a defense that we've seen, Vikings' first 4 third down conversions. We had, obviously the Micah strip sack on the first possession that gave the Cowboys great field position. Saw the Dorrance Armstrong sack on another third down. Just the continued ability of the Cowboys defense to get off the field on third down, whether that is through turnover or whether that is through, bend, not break, give up the yards, get backed up into your own part of the field, and then give up the field goal instead of a touchdown. A massive part of a championship winning defense, the ability to get backed up into your own position and give up the 3 points instead of the 7. That is continues to be a identifiable staple of this Cowboys defense. Even when they do give up big rushing yards, they are the one time they are stopping the run is in the red zone in their own part of the field. And so, if that trend continues, I think you can continue to count on the Cowboys defense, no matter who they're playing against. Obviously today, one of the, hottest offenses in the league, and still being able to set that tone in the first quarter, which I think is, as we continue to see the Cowboys offense, not so much today, but in the past, as Dak has been rounding back into form, the Cowboys offense has been pretty stale in first quarters of games. The stagnant nature of their ability to get anything going in first quarters of games has absolutely been picking up the slack has been the defense to not put the team in any kind of big first quarter hole that has allowed the Cowboys in the past to get their offensive motion going or get their offensive momentum going without being too far behind on the scoreboard. And more importantly, most importantly out of that, not having to get out of their game plan early, like we saw Minnesota be forced to today. I mean, that is huge in a league where the margins of victory and the margins of error are so small and therefore so important, to go an entire week working on a game plan, scripting the first, 2 possessions, scripting, having an idea of an identity that you want to establish early in games. When you have a defense that is not giving up first quarter touchdowns, it allows you some leeway when you can establish that identity or get that momentum going early in games like we've seen. And, that's where the Cowboys defense is absolutely, been depended on to do what they can to keep the Cowboys game plan intact. Because the worst thing is, going 4 or 5 days in practice, working on a specific strategy, and then having all that shit thrown out the door 2 possessions into the game when you're down 10, 14 points, which is something we haven't seen because of the stability that the defense has provided. We'll jump through a few more. Obviously there's no debate any longer. I teased it a little bit at the beginning here. Pollard has at this point probably surpassed CeeDee Lamb as the most explosive option for this Cowboys offense. And, it's probably more so because of what we saw today, the ability to not only run the ball effectively and run the ball at a, league leading average. I think, what's his name? Nance was talking about how Pollard has led the league last year in yards per touch and is leading them again this year. And that's no surprise. Obviously, we've talked about it every week on this show. Pollard is every week it seems like he's over a 6.5 yard per touch average. And last year, led the league in yards per touch, like I said, and has only continued to improve on those numbers this year. I think last year it was a 5.7 average. I had a note somewhere. This is what happens when Mike takes a show off. I make way too many notes, and then I can't even parse through them all to try to get my thoughts straight. But yeah, I think you're seeing an offense that obviously has identified Tony Pollard as their most explosive weapon. Their biggest potential game breaker, like we saw today with the 68-yard touchdown catch out of the backfield where he was literally untouched, unmarked coming out of the backfield, and then great touch by Dak, which is a fantastic sign to see the nice floating ball to the running back out of the backfield. And that was also after Pollard had, at that point, Pollard had 10 rushes for 57 yards. So, I mean, it wasn't just his explosiveness in the passing game. He was still the effective rusher that we've seen the last few weeks with Zeke out. And again, it can't be slept on, the ability of, when the Cows got the possession first and goal from the 2-yard line, it was Pollard on first and second down that took 2 plays to get 1 yard, and then Zeke punches it in from 1 yard out on third down. I mean, I think that is just a perfect encapsulation of what the two guys bring to the table. Obviously, Zeke has nowhere near the explosiveness, but Pollard has nowhere near the hard-nosed rushing ability that Zeke still, despite the inflated cap number, despite the inflated starting job that he still is going to hold as long as he's a Cowboy. I think today was a perfect example where not only you saw a good balance of the two, but you saw a perfect situational use of both guys, where there was no asking one to do something that the other does better. There was a very clearly defined two-role setting. And speaking on that further, with the touchdowns today, Cowboys are now the only team in the NFL with 2 running backs with 4 touchdowns or more. So, further goes to show you that they have clearly established a balance that they think is a proper use of both guys. And I still go back to, as much as it might have been a joke, I do go back to the storyline of Tony Pollard struggling with fatigue from carrying the load with Zeke out. I mean, I think this is clearly a better team with both of those guys, in uniform, healthy. But clearly the balance needs to, at this point, lean. If it's going to lean one way or the other, it needs to lean Pollard, because, that guy just continues to solidify his bag with free agency coming up. Couple more quick thoughts. Romo, I thought Romo had a really interesting comment about Kirk Cousins, talking about how great of a season he's having and how, sneaky great of a career he's had thus far. And then Romo drops a quote, "Just need to win or no one cares about your stupid stats." I mean, there's no way that clearly felt like that was Romo getting a little personal with the lack of respect he receives or perceives that he has been given for his stats that he's put up in his career, but obviously without the wins. I think the Romo Cousins comparisons, after I heard Romo say that, obviously it rattled around in my head, because I think Romo absolutely sees guys like Kirk Cousins who have had, great careers, and in turn sees guys like Matt Stafford who had similar careers until they got the big win, got the Super Bowl ring. Like obviously Stafford last year with the Rams. I think Romo kind of views himself as a part of that group of quarterbacks who, put up outstanding numbers, but for whatever reason, whether their own demise or, poor teams around them. In Stafford's case, I don't know, no one was going to elevate those Lions teams. But I think you clearly hear a bit of personal career vendetta in Romo's voice when he talks about trying to justify Kirk Cousins' greatness, because I think he sees a lot of his own career parallels in Kirk Cousins' numbers without the win to really anchor, solidify any career achievements. Wrapping up the first half, that again, I think Romo has become a caricature of himself, but when he does make, obviously when he does make solid analysis or great references, I loved him getting personal with the Kirk Cousins talk, but I thought he made a great point on the final drive of the Cowboys' first half, where we saw the CeeDee Lamb amazing catch on the sideline, keeping the toes in. As we were watching it in real time, you could see as soon as Biotish hiked the ball, he was running out to establish a pocket on the outside. And I turned to the roommate in LG and immediately said, this is a McCarthy special. This is exactly what they did with Aaron Rodgers to get into field goal range to beat the Cowboys and break their hearts. It's good to see that the rest of the league has not picked up on that still after all these years, because that was, as Romo accurately pointed out, that was basically the exact same play that the Packers ran to get the, Rodgers to Cook with the amazing catch, Rodgers with the amazing throw on the sideline, sets up Mason Crosby for the game-winning field goal against Dallas a few years ago. That was the same play, and to see it executed as well as it was, that is small things like that in a blowout, in a game that's a blowout of this magnitude, where I don't think you can take a whole lot away from it moving forward. The execution on that final drive of the first half, especially with the Cowboys knowing they had the ball to start the second half. That was clearly a go for the jugular. And like I said, setting up Maher's record-breaking fourth field goal of his career of 60-plus yards, even though he had to do it twice. And even though the Cowboys take a timeout, which you're icing Maher, but you're taking a 60-yarder. It is what it is. You're wanting to get set up. I get it. But then the amount of time the league had to buzz down and say, hey, we want to take another look at that. We're not, blow it dead. Don't even let the kick go on. It was the time of the catch, then it was the time through the Cowboys timeout, and then Maher kicks it. But at the last minute, we get word that the official league would like a review to look at CeeDee's catch again, a catch that turned out to be pretty undisputable, an undisputable catch, I should say. That whole exchange seemed extremely ill. Extremely poorly carried out by the league, but alas, Maher actually kicks the second 60-yarder better than he did the first. It was like he made the adjustments and drilled it right down the middle on that second try. We have looking at a few more, once it turned past the second, the second half notes are a lot of, why is Micah still in? When will we see Cooper Rush? How much longer are we going to continue to see a bunch of the starters taking the field every possession? Because it was clear that there was not going to be much of a attempted comeback for the Vikings. Especially after the first couple possessions of the third quarter. I think you could have started to rotate it in at that point. We saw Even saw Jason Peters get in there as well at the left tackle position, something Mike had mentioned on the radio show this past week, that he had been working more at left tackle now than left guard. I did love to see Jaron Kearse. I mentioned I liked the Viking clap pregame. I love to see Jaron Kearse after he had a sack, in celebration, do the Viking clap. I thought that was a good bit, if you picked up on it, a good little salt in the wound of the home crowd. But yeah, I mean, after three possessions, back and forth and back in the third quarter, Cowboys were up to 365 total yards. Vikings were only at 112. I mean, that was about the last time this game was ever in any kind of question of should starters still be in. If that was not a sign, and then we got the slight scare, obviously, with Micah coming up a little limp and having to hobble off the field. Apparently, word is checked out. He's fine. Obviously, didn't need to see him return, but he did return for. It's just hard to keep him off the field, I guess. But you got to take that helmet away because they got a game turnaround on Thursday. Dorrance Armstrong with another sack, a guy that was, a bit. You could question the decision making to bring him back on the 2-year deal that he got, but it's turning out to be an absolute value, and he's turning out to more than fulfill his part, his role in filling the vacuum that losing Randy Gregory, the expected vacuum that losing Randy Gregory, would provide. Dorrance Armstrong has stepped right in. Sam Williams continues to flash, continues to show more. The second round pick in this most recent draft out of Ole Miss. I mean, I think that's the guy that they're really, the next guy that they're really banking on being a game changer on that defensive line. Tank Lawrence, obviously, another sack today after being questionable all week, dealing with both feet hurting, a knee hurting. It's more of the same from that defensive line. It seems like they have not only the dudes to really impact final scores, but they also have the rotations down. It seems like even the interior of that line with Odigizua and Gallimore, you're starting to see the full unit be able to perform no matter who is on the field at different times. Even Dante Fowler, continued to have a few plays where he flashes. And the importance of that is if you can get plays from Dante Fowler, that means you're getting rest for Tank Lawrence or Micah. And in the long run, you're not seeing significant drop off in ability to pressure the quarterback, and that is, of course, we've given him praise all last season and can only continue to give him praise until he takes another head coaching job, and that's Dan Quinn. I mean, his schemes and ability to rotate the defense at all positions, you're seeing the ability to keep guys fresh. Is what is going to be, I believe, a difference maker in terms of playoff success or late season success, because you got to keep these guys fresh. Now, sitting here in week 11, like I said, still with 7 more games to go, you've got to be able to rely on those guys throughout the rest of the year, and especially a guy like Tank Lawrence, who has had the injury issues. It was good to see him still have an impact today after being banged up all week. I mean, it was the most anticlimactic fourth quarter of a Cowboys game that I can remember in forever. I mean, it felt like the Cowboys-Ravens game where, the Ravens just absolutely ran the ball all over the Cowboys in the final game at Texas Stadium. I mean, but just the other way around. It felt like Minnesota had no answers whatsoever throughout this game, and never got a foothold to even consider changes that they could make that would affect the outcome. Obviously, again, Mike Taylor is out of the room today, but we will still be doing Cowboys Overreact Thursday, Thanksgiving. Mike will probably pop back into the room on Thursday, give us a little touch base a little bit from the hellscape. We'll see what kind of connection he still has down there. But again, this is still Cowboys Overreact, brought to you by Pickleball Giant. Also brought to you by Janet and our friends over at R&R Auto Glass. I think, everybody associated with this program, if they haven't used Janet once, they've used them twice or three times even. And it is a consistent review from all of us here on the program. There's no better in town. There's no better located, centrally located right by the airport at Nakoma. They'll get you in and out of there. In my case, if you have special requests of your windshield, if you're trying to get an exact one that came, exactly like it looked when it came from the dealership, they can special order any kind of windshield you want, any kind of windshield you need. They can, slap the replacement in there. You'll be in and out of there in no time. Also brought to our friends George over at JM Pool and Spa, serving the north side of San Antonio, all the way up the corridor there. You can go back and listen to some of our interview with George on Mike Taylor Live from last week, where he had he brought a bunch of the clones into the chat, and we had a good time with George. He also co-founder of Stucknut Radio. Can any level of pool, obviously the picture here looks like a resort. George can do a resort. George can do a backyard swimming pool, family pool. George can do any and all sizes, any and all needs or specials, specialty services that you may need. Hell, he had Mike and I out there scrubbing black algae out of a resort pool, and turns out despite our novice ability, George's expert leadership got that algae wiped out and taken care of. So yeah, again, any level of pool, George is your guy. Hit him up, jmpoolandspa.com. Also brought to you by Mr. Singh, our friend at Texas Cheer Liquor. When he got into bed with us, he had 5 stores, and would you look at that? We're rounding into Thanksgiving weekend, and he is up to 9. And I can think of no better place to get your holiday requirements when it comes to liquor, to be able to deal with your loved ones and your family that you cherish and always look forward to being around, but fill up the flask with the finest liquor that Texas Cheer Liquor has to offer. Again, 9 locations in and around the San Antonio area. We always appreciate Mr. Singh and his sponsorship from the beginning of this whole operation, and now continuing through with our Cowboys Overreact here. Again, can't think of a better stocking stuffer than a little bottle of Casamigos, and I'm sure Mr. Singh has it in every variety, repo, añejo, anything you need. Just hit up Texas Cheer Liquor, 9 locations in and around the San Antonio area, or texascheerliquor.com. LG, how are we doing on time here? How long have we been going?
Yo, you're killing it. Yeah, we're almost an hour here.
Holy shit.
54 minutes.
Well, I said it would be a short one. Well, let's burn through some comments real fast and see if anybody has something better to say than I've been able to add. I said it last week. They lost to Green Bay and then thumped Vikings. Yeah, Eric Price, I was right there with you. I mean, that's this league in a nutshell. That's equally the most infuriating part of this league, but it's also why we keep coming back to it week after week. I mean, it's there's no evidence on paper going into this week that you would have been able to convince me the Lions would beat the Giants and the Cows would beat the Vikings in the manner that the Cowboys did. And, that is about the only thing you could convince me. As you said, you could have convinced me that Washington was going to curb stomp the Texans. And I think 99 times out of 100 that happens. But even it's the NFL, Texans could have it could have been 40-3 Texans over Commanders as well. That's just the insanity of this league. Johnny Truckin, Trayvon Diggs playing his best ball this season. Best ball, last 5 or 6 games now. You're starting to see, more of that shutdown ability. You're starting to see more of the, being able to leave him on an island and not worry about falling for the double moves or taking the unnecessary gamble, going for the turnover when a simple, solid pass defense and breakup would work. Yeah, Maher, Cowboys. It's impossible to speak enough about how Maher has just fallen into their lap and has continued to be a solid contributor and a guy that if Maher is going to continue to hit 50, 53, and 60-yard field goals, granted, in a dome, in a controlled environment in Minnesota, but, that makes and I know a bunch of people are going back, well, if he can hit from 60, why couldn't we have tried 53 last week in Green Bay? I think that the situations there are very different, obviously with the elements included, but also with the situational timing of that attempt versus some of these today. Yeah, Johnny, NFC is wide open. Yeah, Dallas has the capability to beat any team in the NFC. I think that is, I think even someone that's saying, well, I clearly believe Philly is better, is far and away the best team in the NFC. Sure. But I don't think there's a team that they would feel comfortable dominating in a wild card or in a second round matchup. I mean, I think you're still lacking the upper echelon of elite in the NFC this year. Robert, we got the Staubach, Drew Pearson, Hail Mary highlight. That just tells you how bad of a blowout this game was. I heard that game on radio in Germany in Air Force in 75. Very cool. Always, 75, speaking of, that was Cowboys' largest margin of victory before today was 35 points, and they equaled that in 71 and 75. Cowboys lead the league in sacks. Yeah, they up to 41 on the season now, with 7 of them coming today. Great response, specifically, obviously, by every aspect of the team, offense, defense, special teams, but specifically the game plan of DQ and Kellen. I think all the credit needs to start with there, but again, give McCarthy his due as well for being able to motivate this team to come out and perform the way they did after the disappointment, specifically his personal disappointment of losing on the return to Green Bay. Robert, no, we're not watching 60 Minutes yet. We're burning through some comments here before we get out of here. The sideline CD catch was epic. Yeah, definitely will. Go see Janet. They are the best. We wouldn't lie to you. Janet's been with Mike for years for a reason. And like I said, Janet, I showed up and asked them to replace the exact windshield I had previously on the Boss as it came from the dealership originally, and they had it there in less than an hour and had it on that afternoon. They'll get you anything you need. Mike wasn't a no call, no show. This was planned. As I said, Mike is probably touched down in the hellscape now at this point. He'll be off the radio show all week, but I'll be with you. Tune in as normal, 4 to 7. Andy will be with me Monday. and then some incarnation of me with maybe some best of clips from the last few weeks, Tuesday and Wednesday, but we'll get through it. We have breaking news. Mike Taylor is actually checking in the chat. He is still on the jet somewhere over the Pacific. Sergio, what the hell are we talking about? I'm shook. A lot of McCarthy being shook, but in a good shook this way. And then, of course, Thursday we'll do Cowboys Overreact after the Giants game. Mike should check in with us there, but we're not going to do a Mike Taylor live Wednesday night. And then starting next Monday, not tomorrow, but next Monday, Mike will be back for the radio show, but doing it from the hellscape, and then be off that Wednesday as he travels back. But we'll get to all that as we get closer. Mike, safe travels as you are still currently over the Pacific. Thank you all for all tuning in. Again, Cows win, record-setting margin of victory, largest road win ever. Cows win in Minnesota 40-3. Giants at 325 on Thanksgiving Day. We will see all of y'all then.
Overreact is brought to you by Pickleball Giant.